You guys know that there's a trend encouraging men to all get passports and travel abroad. It's not just for sights or good food. No. It's to find wives. To find women who are more traditional. They're traveling all across the world just to find women who are more humble, more feminine, and willing to treat their men better than women in the US. Traveling to places like Italy, Thailand, Brazil, just to find women who will treat them right.
American women have spent years convincing themselves that they're all 9s and 10s while treating even the above average hardworking men like they're completely invisible. Then they want to lose their damn minds when those same men they've ignored suddenly leave the country and have attractive women wanting relationships with them. So what she's actually admitting is that these men were never low value. American women just decided they were. Because the men didn't change, the women did.
The trad wife enjoyers and passport bros, they go together a lot like Reddit and incels, or Reddit and nice guys. Honestly, they're kind of sides of the same coin, which you'll understand what I mean by that in just a moment, don't you worry. But for those of you who have never heard the term passport bro, or maybe you've heard it in passing, you have some inkling of what it means, I'm going to explain exactly what it is, and it pretty much boils down to this. It's mostly westernized men from countries like the United States of America or the UK who travel abroad. You know, they get themselves in a nice little plane and they go fly off to some foreign country, and they find individuals who are in a less fortunate situation to them, many of which are in poverty or something like that. A lot of times women who are just just asking to be taken out of whatever situation they are and brought to the United States of America to have a better life or to seek a better life for their family, something of the sort. And they simply prey upon these women's often desperation, and they either do it for one of two reasons. A, to get themselves a nice traditional wife, or better known as a servant, or B, a little sex kitten or a few that they can take advantage of, which is just disgusting, and you don't need me to tell you that. But that's essentially what the passport bros do. And there's also even this third category, which is even worse, where there's men who do this simply to have relations with women who would otherwise be, actually let's not even say women, girls, who would otherwise be underage here in the Western civilizations. And we're talking like 15 years old, 14, things like that, because in whatever country they're going to, that's age of consent. Might not be where they're from, but it is where they're going. And that's a whole other story that I honestly don't want to get into in this video. What I really want to focus on are those who leave the country to find themselves a traditional wife because they believe that Western women are too head up their ass, too feminist, too independent for their liking. They have too many thoughts in that brain of theirs. You're not supposed to have thoughts. You're supposed to be barefoot in the kitchen and making babies and cooking him dinner. Well, what do you need to have thoughts for, right? That's what they feel and that's what they believe. So they're like, this isn't going to work for me. Let's go to somewhere where the traditional values might still exist and these women might just be desperate enough to come back home with me and be my servant. And so that's what they do. And there's whole Reddit, subreddits dedicated to these passport bros, people giving each other advice, venting about westernized women and culture, etc., and how they can go and basically partake in this predatory practice and get exactly what they're looking for abroad. Now, I want to draw your attention to this creator right here. She's not going to talk about passport bros, but she's going to talk about something that's very related. Basically, the type of people, the type of men in particular, who openly seek a traditional wife in the modern era. Now, obviously, this isn't an umbrella thesis or something that just incorporates every single type of man who wants a trad wife, but she does specifically talk about one of the biggest categories.
What kind of men want a trad wife? Don't answer that, because science can. A new study published in Psychology of Women Quarterly just found something unsettling but Not surprising. Researchers surveyed nearly 600 men between the ages of 16 and 29 to understand how they view the tradwife movement, the social media-driven subculture where women embrace hyper-traditional roles. Think cooking, cleaning, raising children, often submitting to a male breadwinner. And at first glance, some might assume that most men support this lifestyle. And what it means is that they value stability, family structure, tradition. But the data tells a different story. The strongest predictor of whether a man liked the tradwife lifestyle was hostile sexism. And by that, I mean men who already held openly negative or resentful attitudes toward women. They are the most likely to support the idea of women staying home, dependent, and subordinate.
Yes, I'm a tradwife. And I have tradwife duties. We're going to the grocery store.
And to make matters worse, researchers also found that these same men often believed that they needed women emotionally, so seeing them as essential for intimacy and fulfillment, while simultaneously resenting that dependence, creating a contradiction. Desire for control paired with emotional reliance. And many of the most telling responses came from the men themselves. While a few described the lifestyle as simple or efficient, others were more blunt, saying that they liked the idea of clearly defined power dynamics or even describing tradwives as women avoiding real work. In other words, admiration was not always admiration, but rather condescension. And researchers warned that this dynamic could put women in vulnerable positions, especially when they're financially dependent on partners who may already hold hostile views toward them.
Man, by a show of hands, who's shocked? I'm assuming nobody raised their hands because there's nothing surprising about this in the slightest. It very much simplifies the motivation behind why a lot of men are seeking traditional wives in a way that I think a lot of people can grasp very, very easily. And I kind of just want to explain a little bit further from what I understand. And it's pretty simple. I feel like a lot of the men, she said it was like hostile misogyny. So yeah, a lot of the men who are like, I want myself a traditional wife, don't really actually like women that much, honestly. And if you don't really like women, that means you probably don't want to listen to her thoughts. You probably don't want to actually be a partner for any woman. You probably don't really care that much about them as a person. But because, you work many hours and, you get the job done and you want to come home to a nice home cooked meal. You want to come home to your laundry washed and folded on the bed for you or whatever it is, you want your life to be on easy mode outside of work. And how are you going to do that? Either A, you pay someone directly, like a maid or something like that, but that's a lot of money, so you might not want to do that. Or B, you get yourself a traditional wife who has devoted their life to being your servant. And yeah, they're going to choose that option because they don't need to supply any sort of like emotional intelligence to the relationship. They don't need to supply any sort of connection really, or anything like that. They simply just need to supply the money and the resources so that they can provide everything that the man needs. Well, this is what brings us to passport bros, because here in our progressive Western societies, feminism has become a very prevalent, powerful driving force here that has led to greater and greater independence for women, which is a fantastic thing if you're not a piece of shit. However, if you go to the other side of things and you put yourselves in the shoes of a piece of shit asshole douchebag looking for a tradwife, you find very quickly that feminism is your enemy, your biggest enemy, your biggest hater, your biggest op, And some people want to fight their ops, right? They want to get rid of their ops, and they've been trying that. That's why, if you look in the modern media nowadays, you've got the podcast bros who are trying to shoot down feminism, trying to bring back toxic masculinity in full force to combat feminism in many, many different ways. And of course, obviously, the political climate doesn't help that either. But since they're kind of losing the battle on all fronts here, and feminism is definitely winning, if you can't beat them, then you go join a foreign country who's already kind of enslaved to that way of thinking, which is precisely what the passport bros are doing. I mentioned some things about Reddit earlier. I do also want to say that we're going to be looking at the Passport Bros Reddit. Yes, You heard that right. There is a Passport Bros Reddit. No, it's not criticism of the Passport Bros. It's where these goofy goobers go to vent about their Passport Bros troubles, give each other advice, talk about the best countries to go to if you want, one of the 3 things that I mentioned earlier, a wife or a sex slave, essentially, or somebody who would otherwise be underage in your original country to take advantage of. Yeah, so they share all of that insightful information amongst each other, and they complain about feminism and Western culture and all that good, lovely stuff. So we'll be, sure to take a quick gander at that enlightening subreddit. But before that, she does a really good job of kind of talking about Passport Bros and the, expectations around them, etc. So I'll let her go ahead and share her piece.
Journeying abroad to these countries that they consider more traditional always crack me up because there's usually more than meets the eye for them. Number one, the women aren't nearly as traditional as they consider. Number two, there's a little something behind that traditionalism that they were not expecting. Typically, that comes with payments to families. And a lot of times, let's say they go to South Korea, the Philippines, whatever, a lot of times that bride is going to be expected to send money home to her family to help their financial condition every month, usually. That's usually a child to parent expectation in a lot of these situations. Okay, so we have that. Number two, they may also ask for the guy to begin sponsoring people to come over. Yeah, for either visa, whatever, what have you. That was an expectation that happened a lot when my dad was in the Army. Some dude from the US would get married to someone abroad, and all of a sudden it was on that guy to start bringing family members over. Surprise. And then next up, we also have parental obligations. When the parents start to age in a lot of these communities, because they're so family oriented, which is what these trad boys want, they're so family oriented, the parents and or grandparents will either move in with the children, or the children will move in with the parents and grandparents to take care of them.
I mean, if you're one of these undesirable douchebags, God, you just can't catch a break, can't get what you want in your home country, and you can't get it in somewhere else. You got to make these compromises, these sacrifices, no matter where you go. Boo-hoo, boo them, right? Now, this is a point of interest that does get talked about in the Passport Bros Reddit that we're going to take a look at as well in a moment. So yeah, it seems like no matter what these guys do, they're never truly going to get exactly what they're looking for, which is basically a shell of a woman who simply does what she's told and takes care of them, their house, and their kids with no questions asked, no complaints, and that's all there is to it. And he simply goes to work, eats, and sleeps. Now, this person tells a story about an interaction he had with a woman, a passport girl, if you will, who got into a relationship with a Western man, and she talks about her experience with him. It does not sound good. Let's put it that way.
I was on vacation in Asia, and I was talking to this woman, and she was telling me about her relationship because she's married. And she is in her early 20s, very pretty, and she's married. So I asked to see a picture of her husband, and he looks like the definition of a passport bro. Very old, very overweight, very chopped. So I asked her, how did they meet? And she just said, I don't want to talk about it. So I apologized, and I said, I'm sorry for asking. And she said, no, it's okay. Let's just say I am not happy with this arrangement. So I said, I'm sorry. I take it you don't want to have kids with him, huh? She said, hell no. But he wants kids, so I know eventually I will have to do that. But for now, I'm just not going to think about it. So I asked her, so how do you feel about all this? This must be suffocating for you, huh? And she said, honestly, my situation isn't good, but the money he gives to my family gives us the opportunity to have a better life. So even though I'm unhappy, I have to remember that I'm sacrificing this for my family.
I mean, that's sad. That is so unbelievably sad. And these men unapologetically take advantage of these situations. It's genuinely horrible. I mean, you have to have so little of a moral compass to literally travel to another country, essentially bribe a woman with the promise of money and bettering their life, and they feel obligated to do so because they care about their family more than they care about themselves. They care more about their family and helping them than being happy, their own happiness and their own fulfillment. So they're willing to sacrifice their life, essentially, like their, you know, joy and stuff, to be with a man who probably doesn't care for them at all, just wants a servant that's going to take care of them, and so that their family can have a better life. It's really sad. Honestly, it's very, very, very sad. And here on this Reddit, we're going to see exactly what these very unapologetic, undesirable douchebags are really like. So this guy's post honestly isn't that important to read. Honestly, it's hard to read because for some reason these types of people don't know how to type. But it's the comments that follow this conversation that they're having underneath it that I find strikingly interesting to talk about. It's very misogynistic, but it says most men never had a healthy dating life of abundance in history. So I don't know. Basically, the post is about like finding those dating options in other countries. This person says, and up until fairly recently, a healthy man with basic social skills and a job could pretty easily find a wife. Now, thanks to social media, the benchmark is way higher. Women have near infinite dating options today and don't want to settle for men that their mothers would have gladly married. Now, this guy's saying this as a problem. If I would make this exact same statement, but I would say it as a good thing, that you don't have to settle for trash, right? Because the men that this dude's referring to that like their mothers would have happily married, a lot of times were misogynistic douchebags who expected you to be a certain way. And, you know, like, you know what that type of traditional man is like. I mean, for a long time, for decades and decades, abuse in households, like towards the wives and stuff like that, just went completely unchecked because domestic abuse, it wasn't taken seriously. I mean, husbands would quite literally assault their wives, and they would say, you can't assault your wife. That's impossible. You're married to them. And in reality, you absolutely can. But decades and decades ago, up until, you know, recently, that sort of thing wasn't even taken seriously at all. And before, you know, the last 100 years or so, maybe even more recently than that, you couldn't even like really leave your husband because you wouldn't have a job to go to. You wouldn't have education. You wouldn't have a life waiting for you if you did somehow manage to leave your husband. If he abused you and treated you horribly, etc., well, you were just stuck dealing with that. And this is the type of stuff that they're referring to, the type of men that a guy with basic social, a guy with basic social skills or a good job, that's kind of what they're talking about here. Now, this person makes one of the most incelish comments I've ever seen. They're all sharing the same small pool of elite men. What the fuck is an elite man? Because I don't think you don't understand. Now, they posted a link to Are We Dating the Same Guy? Which is, I've heard of that before. My wife has been on there before. She likes to see the stories on there. But it's essentially like a website. Not really a website, a page, I guess, where people will like post pictures of the man they're dating and make sure that that man's not like cheating on them or something of that nature. Now, this person has taken this as they're just sharing the same pool of elite men. Like, what is an elite man to you? Is that your typical alpha male, chiseled jaw douchebag, or what? Because their perception of what people are interested in is pretty damn wrong. They firmly believe that you got to have huge muscles and a six-figure salary to secure a relationship. Well, that's simply not true. But it's the lies that they tell themselves because they're not wise enough to understand that the reason that they can't get a girlfriend or a wife is because they have undesirable qualities and characteristics that they do nothing to fix. And this person says, and when you combine that with feminism, you get a failed society. And this has 19 upvotes. The original post itself only has 18. So like, and it just tells you very clear that people are liking, the type of stuff that these people are saying. And then a lot of these additional comments are just a lot of like copium, making excuses for, why they can't secure relationships and why it's like a requirement to go overseas. I mean, it's just pathetic. Now, to kind of, bring this all home, the whole purpose of this video is to talk about a practice, the passport bros thing, that I didn't realize was so prevalent until I did just the tiniest bit of research and I came across tons of videos about it. I came across many Reddit posts. There's so many that we didn't even touch about people literally trying to like give advice to each other. Like, this is like a whole community. This is a growing thing. And I think the whole practice is seriously disgusting. It's seriously predatory. But these types of people who engage in these activities, they don't care at all the implications of any of what they're doing. And now here's this, I should have made this point earlier. But just because, like, if you go abroad or something, you find yourself a girlfriend or a wife or something, that doesn't make you a passport bro automatically or anything like that. Especially if you do so, like, and everything is, like, in good faith, you know? But I do think those who are like, shucks, I can't find myself a servant who will live under my roof and marry me, and not complain about it here in this Western society because feminism is too prevalent. I must go to a country that is less fortunate, where I'm going to be the big buck billionaire over there because I make the American Benjamins here, and simply court myself a woman who feels obligated to be with me because they want to help out their family. That's a disgusting transactional action. And it absolutely needs to be condemned. I feel like people need to talk about this more because this isn't like a low-key underground hidden society thing. This is pretty big. It's spreading. It's spreading like wildfire. And I think the podcast bros, they peddle this type of thinking as well, because the podcast bros, they want you to think the same thing, that you need to be this high value man who makes lots of money and has all these, you know, XYZ arbitrary qualities. And then you need to go get yourself a woman who's not going to ask you questions, who's just simply going to be a maid, a servant for you, so you can go focus on making the big bucks and things like that, you know? So yeah, it just becomes more and more of a thing. And the less people talk about it and criticize it the way it should be, the more these people are going to feel comfortable that they're doing something right, that they're not doing anything wrong, that there's no issues with it. And I know there's the argument at the end of the day where like there is some good that comes out of, because like there are families that are genuinely being helped by the money that is received. How about instead of doing this in such a selfish way that like it's a transaction for you to essentially get a servant, a modern day slavery, and instead people maybe use that money to just support these countries, donate, you know, like send resources, like be an actual good and helpful member of society without taking advantage of somebody at the same time. I mean, this whole thing is given fucking colonizer, let's be real. But anyway, that's really all I gotta say about this, guys. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. See you all next time.